Hi, welcome to our session today. Today we're going to be speaking about engaging English learners in classroom conversation. 5 strategies for bolstering Oracy skills. My name is Katie LaShawn, and I am joined by my colleague here at the University of Notre Dame, Jennifer Dees.
We're so glad all of you have joined us.
As we do all things, we would love to begin our session together today with a prayer, and a prayer that's very near and dear to our team here. Please join us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Loving God, thank you for the opportunity to encounter you and others. Animate my work that I may embrace my students and their families who so beautifully reflect the diverse and universal church. Inspire my efforts to educate the whole child, celebrating the cultures and languages that enrich our school. Bless my efforts to empower children and families to recognize and employ their own unique gifts and talents to renew our community in your image. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Well, welcome again, everyone. We just wanted to take a moment to introduce ourselves. Katie and I are part of the English as a New Language, the ENL team at the University of Notre Dame. We believe deeply that our Catholic schools are enriched and graced by the culturally and linguistically diverse students that we serve. And the mission of our team is to cultivate teacher leaders who are trained to educate these children well and who are also able to advocate for these students and their families. Thanks for joining us. Our outreach starts with individual touch points like today, a PD, but then we also have multiple other ways for teachers to deepen their expertise. These include our online modules and our ENL Hernandez Fellows program. More information about this outreach can be found on our website. And speaking of, we're going to take you there right now because that's where your packet is for today's presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jenny. So for everyone following along here, we would love for you to visit the following website. ACE, that's the Alliance for Catholic Education, ndnotredame.edu/ENL. And you'll be able to download this graphic organizer. I would like to show you how to navigate this. So again, if you go to that website, what you're able to see on our homepage here is our English as a New Language program. And if you scroll down, you're able to see all of the different things that we do and the myriad of ways in which we want to help you support your English learners. But if you click on innovative resources, there's a whole host of incredible things here that are free to you, that are great for your faculty meetings, that are just really good resources for you as educators. So check those out. But if you come down to the bottom, there's a button called NCEA Webinar for Oracy. And if you click on that, you're able to open up your packet for today. So follow along, and we're going to go through kind of these first pieces as well, but this will be the first page that we're working on together. So trying to model good teaching here. So thanks a lot, Jenny, for directing us to our website. All right, let's go back to our presentation. So today, in our very short and brief time together, Jenny and I would like to help you do the following. Number 1, we want to help you define Oracy and what it is, obviously. We want you to describe why Oracy is a bridge to reading and writing, which is all great goals we have for our English learners. And we want you to try out several Oracy strategies that are designed, research-based and designed to intentionally bolster productive talk in your classroom. So at the end of our time together today, we're going to circle back here and you're going to be able to put a lovely check mark by all 3 of these pieces. Before we get into these 5 strategies, we want you to think about 3 really big ideas. So on your graphic organizer, you can see that we have a nice space for you to jot down these ideas, these 3 big ideas. All right, modeling for you, which is really good for our English learners. Here's your very first big idea. A language learner is not a language learner, is not another language learner. Every English learner is different. And I know that you know this, but one big way that our children and our students are different is the way in which and where they are progressing through the 5 stages of language acquisition. So there are 5 stages. So a child in the first stage, the silent period, is very different than a child who's in the intermediate stage. So the intermediate stage can take 3 to 5 years. These children can have almost 6,000 words. So I think the point I want to make here is that we really need to know as educators where our children are in these 5 stages, and to acknowledge that these first 3 stages are what we call obvious English learners. But these last 2 stages, we can't forget about. Our students are still learning English and perfecting English and learning the nuances of language. So as we talk about productive speech, we need to think about where our students fall within these 5 stages.
Thanks, Katie. That's so important. Along with this idea of the stages of second language acquisition, we also have to be aware that there are 4 domains of language: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And all 4 of these domains need to be intentionally planned for when we plan our lessons. They need to be practiced in every lesson, and we need to promote growth for our students in all 4 of these areas. So make sure those are in the forefront of your mind as we're going through today's strategies.
Absolutely. And I would just add one important thing to keep in mind is that students may possess different proficiency levels in these 4 domains. And that's why some of your big assessments like WIDA actually give you score reports in each of these 4 domains. And so it's something to begin to really focus upon. And today, obviously, we're going to hone in on one of those very specific domains.
And as Katie was saying, we're going to focus on speaking because speaking is a precursor to reading and writing. If you think about little ones at home or that you have in your family, children they spend a lot of time listening, and then they start to produce speech many, many years before they ever learn to read or write in school. And so we need to foster this natural process in our classroom. Our students will learn to speak before they're very proficiently reading and writing, often in our classrooms. And so we need to honor the difference in these domains and bolster particularly speaking skills, because the fruits of that we see trickle over into these other areas.
Absolutely perfect, Jenny. Thank you for those good reminders. We'd ask at this time that you pause your video for just a moment and take some good notes on this first idea, the second idea, and the third idea here in your graphic organizer. Thank you for pausing. We're going to carry on. So rejoin us as soon as you've been able to take some notes there. But we really want to start here. What is Oracy? So as Jenny showed you before, there are these 4 domains of language. Oracy is speaking. So Oracy is the ability to express oneself fluently and grammatically in speech. It's very tied to listening skills, obviously. But why does Oracy matter? Oracy matters. It matters that our students are able to do it. It matters that we pay attention to it instructionally, because productive talk leads to deeper learning. We also know that Oracy is a gateway to reading and writing, as Jenny just mentioned. So oftentimes I don't think we hear Oracy thrown around in our classrooms or in our planning, but it should be. It should be something that we're thinking about. And I'm going to show you right now an incredible video of children who are practicing their Oracy skills and demonstrating really strong, productive speech. We are convinced that by the end of this video, you too will want to try so many of these things in your classroom. So for just a moment, just sit back and relax. And I want you to take notice of how the teachers in this video are promoting Oracy. Here we go.
Someone in your family comes from somewhere else in the world and has come to live in London. Could you turn to the person next to you and have a discussion about this talking point?
I think Stratford is a better place to live because they're not against anyone, and can I just clarify you? What do you mean by against?
Oracy is the keystone to everything that happens in the curriculum. There are such high expectations for talk, and it does really make a difference in the children how articulate and how confident they are.
The vision of School 21 is to prepare young people for the world that they're going to go into in the 21st century. I think one of the biggest barriers to the students we serve really getting on in life is lack of good communication skills. We need to elevate speaking to the same level as reading and writing.
So we have a vote. What makes me enjoy talking the most is that everybody's listened to you and you're like part of the world and you feel respected and important.
When I'm talking, they're listening what I'm saying, and sometimes they give me questions, or then maybe I give them questions.
Every child within this school is expected to speak in every lesson, in every opportunity throughout their school day. And we try and create lots of different contexts for young people to hone their skills as speakers.
So what I want us to do now is to have a discussion about different kinds of culture. And I want us to discuss this. Some cultures are better than others.
I think every teacher, if you say to them, do you talk in your classroom? Of course there's talking in the classroom, but what's different here is the deliberateness of it.
Every teacher needs to have that toolkit of things that they can draw on to bring effective talk into their practice.
We've done a lot of work introducing sentence stems that children can use for different situations. So for agreeing with somebody, for disagreeing politely with someone, for challenging someone.
And while we're doing that, I want you to make sure that you're using some of the sentence stems. So you might say linking to someone's point or build on something that somebody has said.
Building on there. I agree, because maybe
The thing that's had the biggest impact on my practice is probably discussion guidelines.
We are going to be discussing why beliefs were important or why they weren't important in ancient Greece. Could anybody remind me about any of our discussion guidelines?
One of them is when someone's not contributing, you have to invite them by asking them a question or saying their name.
Excellent. Why would you do that, Aaron?
Then everyone has an idea.
Everyone gets to share their idea, don't they? Well done.
So discussion guidelines were created in conjunction with the children. These are the 5 or 6 key things that we think make a really good discussion. I've been able to take a step back, and I think that the children take on a larger role within the classroom.
I think it should be Aries and Athena because they're both the god of war. To challenge your diva, there are lots of fish.
And so another key way of promoting oracy in the classroom is to think carefully about the groupings that you use. So whether you're getting them to talk in pairs or in trios or in larger groups.
Sometimes it's best to have students in threes. Sometimes we look at how they can stand in the traverse opposite each other. Each of those different groupings enables a different type of conversation.
if you see inside them, we're all human beings and we're all people.
Our oracy program is comprehensive. It has to be seen in maths and science and those subjects that traditionally haven't had a talk focus.
There are 24 cookies altogether.
There are 24 cookies altogether.
There are 3 children.
There are 3 children.
All right, let's see if
I would say that I'd always encouraged talk in my maths lessons before, but what's changed is that I really plan very carefully for talk, and I model and structure the talk very explicitly.
Okay, so we're going to go and do our talk task.
The talk task, they get to practice what they've done in the new learning, and they're talking through what they're doing. So it's about developing their vocabulary and language of explanation.
We were talking about fractions. We done like 4 circles. And then we needed to share 24 in each group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Your turn. We were using sentences to help us. 24 shared equally between 4 children is equal to 6. Let's do another one.
There are lots of different reasons why we get students who may not feel it's almost their place to speak. So for all those reasons, oracy is an issue of equality, of equity, of social mobility.
Wow, I heard some pretty amazing discussions going on just now. So let's get some feedback from some groups.
Because of the focus on oracy, we've seen our students become much more confident in their ideas by creating the context and the opportunities for them to speak. They've just flown and become eloquent, engaging speakers.
Hayden?
We came to a decision and said that we disagree with the text. Everyone is unique. Everyone's the same, but they do their things in different ways.
Okay, friends, thank you very, very much. We hope that you found that incredible video on oracy to be meaningful and productive for you. In your graphic organizer, there is a space to really pause here and think about what your takeaways were. Thank you for watching. Oh, sorry, Jenny, you're on mute.
Sorry, one of our big takeaways from this video and Oracy in general is this beautiful quote that our job as teachers is to create classrooms filled with student voices, and that we should not be the main voice being heard. If I am speaking English proficiently and fluently, I need to give my students the opportunity to practice those skills, not just to hear me do it all day long. Plus, it helps them internalize all the great content I'm sharing as well. So with that in mind, we jump into our 5 strategies for today. And these are the 5 strategies we'll be talking about. And there are places in your graphic organizer to take notes on these and reflective questions where you can pause this presentation and jot down some thoughts as well. So to jump in, our first strategy is to establish expectations with your students, very much based on the discussion guidelines we saw in that video. Do your students know what's expected of them when they have a turn and talk with a partner, or a small group discussion, or a large group discussion? If not, take some time to think about what your expectations are. Maybe you even brainstorm these with your students, and then to clearly post them and communicate them in the classroom so that everyone knows what our expectations are when we engage in these important conversations. We invite you to pause the video now and to take a moment to think about that and jot some ideas down on your graphic organizer.
Thank you, Jenny. I was also going to say, Jenny, I really like the 4 that you've outlined here. I think they're really helpful, especially number 3. I really love when we encourage students to give proof of listening, whether that's just through their body language, or whether it's just giving proof by repeating back what they're hearing from their fellow students. I think it's really, really important. So
Katie,
we can't wait. Go ahead, Jenny.
Thanks for highlighting that. I love the idea of being prepared to change our minds, that we enter a conversation not just wanting to articulate our point, but being aware that change might happen as well. So lots of great things you can pull out in these.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking a moment to pause and think about these expectations. Here's your question. What are the expectations you have for talk in your classroom? How can you share these with your students? Okay, we're going to go on to kind of the second idea here, but unpause us or resume us whenever you have completed your graphic organizer. I really loved that video for many, many reasons. One thing is that it just overall elevates speaking to the level of reading and writing, and something that we need to be talking about more often when we talk about how our students are doing. At the core of what the video was saying, they used this phrase. They said that productive speech is a form of equality, equity, and social mobility. So one way we need to get there is by really scaffolding our students' language. Students are not just going to pick up productive speech, they need to have it modeled, and they need it to be scaffolded. So the reason we really stick to this number 2, the idea of sentence frames, is that sentence frames are excellent scaffolding. They're a great way to model sentence structure, and they promote writing stamina, right? So when we're really not just using speech, but when you're having students fill in these sentence frames, we're going to produce writing stamina overall. I'm going to escape here for just a moment, and we're going to share with you an incredible video from our colleague, Claire Roach, who's going to show you a little bit more about what sentence frames look like in the classroom. Enjoy your video.
Welcome to today's ENL 2-minute tip. We're going to explore the highly effective strategy of sentence framing. Sentence frames, or sometimes known as sentence stems, are a great way to support language development in English learners. And like most effective language support, they have the added bonus of helping all the students in your class. A teacher using a sentence frame to scaffold language provides portions of a sentence to model language use. The frame can be the start of a sentence, the end of a sentence, or a sentence with strategic blanks throughout it. The key here is that students share their own ideas to extend or complete the sentence that you've provided. Now, why are sentence frames so effective for English learners? First, they're an excellent scaffold. Often English learners have their ideas, but they don't know yet how to share the idea. And sentence stems don't give students answers. They just help provide the language to help students begin to express or share the idea that they have. Secondly, sentence frames model great sentence structure in English, especially, and this is key, when you repeat a sentence form over and over again so that students can learn things like word order, punctuation, academic vocabulary, and more. Finally, using sentence stems can nudge you and me as teachers to integrate more quick writes into our instruction. So by using sentence stems, we're promoting writing stamina with our students. Now let's take a look at some great examples and a few resources that I think will be particularly helpful in getting started. Because, but, and so sentences. I actually took these from The Writing Revolution, a book written by Judith Hochman, which lays out a wonderfully coherent way to integrate sentence stems. So if you're going to get any book to help you through this process, I recommend starting there. All right, so let's suppose that I read in class the book Alma and How She Got Her Name. I might provide my students with these 3 sentence starters to help them begin expressing and sharing their ideas. I like Alma's name because, I like Alma's name, but, it's important to highlight that comma, I like Alma's name, so. So a student might answer, I like Alma's name because Alma's name came from her family. Or I like Alma's name, but it is very long. Or I like Alma's name, so I hope she says it proudly. This gives you an idea that I'm not actually giving students their concepts. They're providing their own ideas. I'm helping them to get started in using language to express those ideas. At a middle school level, it might look something like this. The American colonists wanted to be independent from England because they might answer they wanted to govern themselves or were sick of paying taxes. The American colonists wanted to be independent from England, but they were scared because they knew how powerful England was. And the American colonists wanted to be independent from England, so, and then a student might respond, they fought the Revolutionary War. As you can see, students really are providing a lot of content. But again, you're helping to provide some of the language structures. And when you model these types of sentences again and again and again, they really are able to absorb this type of structure and then use it again in their own novel way. I also want to provide you with a very brief example of what some of these sentence frames can look like in content-specific classes. So let's delve into science. Let me provide you with 3 examples. Blank is a type of blank. Or I can predict that blank because the students fill in their answers. Or finally, to find out if blank, comma, it's important to point out any kind of punctuation, I will, and students will tell you what the experiment will be about. Now remember, English learners don't just need to see these frames once. They need to see the same type of frame again and again so that they get repeated exposure. Using sentence starters frames really is so easy, but it makes such a big impact in your classroom. So start using them thoughtfully in your classroom this year. Good luck.
Many thanks to our colleague Claire there, who walked us through a couple examples, and some of our favorite is because, but, and so. So we hope that you're really successful at using those. You saw sentence frames in the video, and so we just want to provide you one more example here. If I was to turn to my class today and I said, well, talk about the weather. Who knows what answers we might get back, certainly. But I really think that providing these sentence frames will provide your students the language they need to more fully and thoughtfully express themselves. So again, as Claire mentioned, these sentence frames are just helping them to get started. So today the weather is, it feels blank outside, I think I will wear. What might this look like for your older students? Again, one thing to think about is What is the intention behind the use of language here? What are my standards asking my students to do? Is it to describe the language? Great. At an older level of language proficiency, or even just up the grade levels, it might be to actually discuss weather through the lens of causation. So we've added on a little sentence frame here at the bottom. This weather is caused by. Remember that sentence frames are not just for the early grades, and they're not just for early language learners. They're for those final 2 stages as well. So take just a moment and write down a little bit of how you're going to use sentence frames. And here's your question. Questions. How can I use sentence frames to support my students speaking? How can I use sentence frames to stretch? All right.
And Katie, I just want to add, as a middle school teacher, sentence frames are not babyish. They provide our students an entree into the conversation. And they're so important to use in our middle school and high school grades. And if you're already using sentence frames regularly in the classroom, consider adding on because, but, or so. Again, let's stretch our students' writing. Let's not just talk about, I'm going to wear this today, but adding a because, or this is my favorite character, so I'm going to. Let's add on, let's stretch students' speaking and writing. And sentence frames are a great way to do this, to build that stamina.
Absolutely. 100%. Take just a moment and jot down your thoughts here. While you're jotting, restart us whenever you're ready. We're going to go on to talk tasks.
Talk tasks are wonderful. They're like sentence frames on steroids. So we know that when students speak with one another, it gives them the opportunity to negotiate language in a way that they can't do with a pencil and a paper. Your friend can say to you, what did you mean by that? That doesn't make sense. I'm not sure that's right. When we're writing on a piece of paper, we don't have that luxury. So having students be critical and intentional about how they speak in the classroom is really important. So this wonderful video that stars Katie will break down talk tasks and how we can use them effectively in the classroom, particularly a science classroom.
Welcome back to our ENL 2-minute tips. Today we're going to talk about Oracy and how important it is to plan for Oracy in the classroom. I would like to begin this tip with a scenario that you might see in a 5th grade classroom. Friends, please turn to your neighbor and talk about the layers of the earth that we've been covering in science. Immediately, you can just see the students chatting away, sharing knowledge, and reinforcing learning, right? But upon closer examination, you may begin to hear a lack of academic vocabulary being used, or you may begin to see that your emergent bilingual students are unengaged in this Oracy activity. How might we structure this activity in a way that promotes strong Oracy skills? First, let's define Oracy. Oracy is the ability to express oneself grammatically and fluently in speech. We all know that talking is the gateway to reading and writing, and yet we do not often focus on developing strong speaking and Oracy skills in our lessons, but we should. Purposeful and productive talk leads to deeper meaning. When planning for Oracy activities in your classroom, please keep 2 things in mind. Number 1, Oracy must be structured and it must explicitly model language. 2, Oracy must be rehearsed and it must be repeated. Let's revisit our science lesson. At first, I simply asked students to talk about the layers of the earth with their neighbor. Let's try this topic again using one of my favorite Oracy activities, talk tasks. Talk tasks are speaking supports that help students converse. This specific talk task includes a visual, a word bank, and model language. In my classroom, I could give this sheet to all of my students and I could say something like, friends, in science, we've been learning about the layers of the earth. Using this talk task sheet, I would like for you to converse with 3 different friends about the layers of the earth. Your sheet includes talking points, a labeled image of the earth, and a word bank. As we do this activity, remember to talk like scientists today. In this activity, partner one might say, I am thinking about a layer of the earth that is made up of, and it is blank state of matter. It also, this would be a great place to insert some descriptive language. Then you can ask your partner, can you guess what layer I'm thinking about? Partner two might say, I'm describing a different layer of the earth. This layer is made up of blank and it's blank state of matter. It also, what layer am I describing? With this talk task activity, the conversations are more targeted, they're more academic in nature, and they are reinforced with repetition, more so than had I simply asked students to share with one another. Please remember that purposeful and productive talk leads to deeper meaning. In your classrooms this week, happy talking.
As awkward as that was, thanks, Jenny, for walking us through that video.
Thank you, Katie, for all that highlights. And your science example is just a wonderful example. And then I love the math example that was included in the video too about the cookies. Talk tasks are so great for so many reasons. We're keeping our students on task. We're modeling appropriate sentence structure. When we include a word bank, we're really targeting academic vocabulary and bolstering that. And what I also love about talk tasks is they're repetitive, right? So I use them multiple times. For example, in this setting, they would have multiple iterations of how the cookies were divided. And in Katie's science lesson, you would gather in multiple small groups or meet with different partners and have that conversation over and over again. So talk tasks take sentence frames just a little bit further and really provide opportunities for rich, targeted conversation. Go ahead and pause the video and think about how you could use a talk task to promote rich conversations in your classroom.
Thank you very much, Jenny. And now that you've practiced talk tasks, I want to move on to one of my favorite things to do to build Oracy. And it builds off of Jenny's idea of repetition. So these are chants. And so chants are a great way for students to literally exercise their voice and often their energy here and their creativity, but it's really, really in the repetition that we are able to uncover and really kind of fossilize or set in stone some language. So I'm going to walk you through the structure first. So the structure of a chant, and this comes from Be Glad, this particular structure here. You can download this, you can copy this, but here's how it goes. Blank here, blank there, blank, blank everywhere. Adjective, noun, verb. Look at that, Jenny. Can you imagine as a class, if I'm writing this down, we're honing in on parts of speech. Then it comes noun, preposition, noun, right? Let's see what this looks like in practice. So as embarrassing as it is, I love these and I'm going to do one with you. Are you ready? All right. And there, of course, there's motions. You've got to do your motions with your students. You've got to get your TPR in there. So you say reptiles here, reptiles there, reptiles everywhere, hungry reptiles hunting, cold reptiles sleeping, fast reptiles striking, and slow reptiles crawling, reptiles under rocks, reptiles in the sea, reptiles over eggs, and reptiles all around me. I hope reptiles are not all around me, and I'll stop there with that example. But what I'd love for you to do now is think about how you would use these in your classroom, certainly, but I'd love for you to pause for just a moment and think about how you might make a chant with some of these themes. We do a lot of professional development, and these are ones that we've seen be produced. And notice here too, it's not just pre-K, K1 and 2 that do chants. I promise you your high school students love chants, and I promise you they need to practice their prepositions, their nouns, and their adjectives just as much. So once saw a really great one about Rome and about habitats and constellations. So take just a moment, and here's your question. How can I use chants in my classroom next week?
Thanks, Katie. It's so catchy. We could do Oracy here, Oracy there, Oracy everywhere. And that's exactly what we want to see in your classrooms. Our kids engaging in talk and repeating content in wonderful, catchy ways, and Chants are a great way to do that. Another fun thing to get your kids up and moving that we oftentimes don't spend enough time being really intentional about is the way we group our students. And at the same time, we often get questions about this. Should I put all my English language learners together? Should I put my English language learners with native English speakers? How should I divide up my children in my classroom? And the answer is, like in a lot of education, you should do it all.
And it depends, right?
Yes. There are times when we should keep all of our English language learners together. And there are other times when we should differentiate and spread them out and give them exposure to students who are native English speakers. There are also times when we should have students in small discussions like a pair, and other times when we can use really great big discussions of a nest or an onion or our really fun inside-outside circle. I'm
happy to show that video now, Jenny, if that works. Oh, well,
great.
I guess it's going. So here we go.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
So in inside outside circle, I take half the number of students from my class and make them form an inner circle and half of them form an outer circle. And then I give them an activity to do with each other and they work as partners. And then they move one step when I announce that your inner circle has to move one step to the right or one step to the left. And then they do the same activity again with the new partner who's standing in front of them. What I like about inside outside circle is that every student gets to work with each other. I mean, they cannot say, oh, I don't want to work with this particular student because the pairing is very random and you never know when you move 3 steps who you're going to be facing. So students are forced to work with each other in a way, but in a fun environment. I think students like it because they get to move and there's a lot of body movement involved there and they get to work in open spaces and it's not the traditional sitting down and doing activity.
100%. And Jenny, what do you think was in their hands? What do you think they were holding?
I was going to say, did everyone notice the talk task paper that was in their hands? I hope there was a word bank and a visual on there, or at least just a sentence stem to get those conversations started. But I also love in that video how thoughtful the teacher was about her pairings. I need my kids to overcome this awkwardness of wanting to be partners with people. I need to get everyone talking to people they don't regularly speak with. And so inside outside circle was the appropriate choice.
Oh, sorry, Jenny.
For different situations, different things are appropriate, but think intentionally about how you group the students in your classroom to promote engagement and talk and better understanding and mastery of skills. So take a minute to ponder that question about intentional grouping and jot down your thoughts in your graphic organizer.
All right, friends, thank you. Oracy in the classroom, and think about why it's a bridge to reading and writing. In all of this, we hope that you are carving out more time to creating safe and productive talk spaces for your students. So big check by 1 and big check by number 2. We also hope that you revisit those 3 big ideas of the 5 stages of language acquisition, around the 4 domains of language, and around so Oracy being the precursor to reading and writing. So make sure that you have those big 3 ideas. And then finally, we want you to try out several of these strategies. Send us an email. You'll have our emails. Send us an email in the front of your packet. We want to hear how you are doing with setting expectations, sentence frames, how you're doing with talk tasks, how you're doing with chants, and how you're doing with your groupings. In everything that we do, we wish you the very best of luck in all of our prayers. And thank you for your advocacy on behalf of all of your culturally and linguistically diverse children. Thank you
so much for all you do. Happy talking.
Happy talking. Bye, friends.